got me all right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Awesome.
Epi folks, how are you?
Hey,
Hey,
Leah,
how's
how's
it
it going?
going?
It's going. It's going. It's a
Awesome to
beautiful
hear.
Tuesday.
How's the weather
Happy
over
to be
there in
here.
the U.S. Virgin Islands today?
Actually, it's a little overcast. So I'll be
Oh
honest
yeah.
with you. I'm a little concerned because while Caribbean is paradise, our Wi-Fi is not necessarily such. And so,
Uh-oh.
Well, you're coming through and sounded pretty good so far. So hey,
good. I'm glad. I hope we can stay on that track for sure.
all good. And we'll give it a few more minutes to let people join in. But Leah, I appreciate you being on here, and I know this is your first one. Usually we do a little just quick trivia from last week's webinar. So for those of you that are in here, I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Feel free to participate. Again, this is a trivia question from last week's webinar. We were talking about macro and MIPS. And I'm going to go ahead and share screen with you guys. And James, I know you'll be participating. So anyways, question for today is, what is one of the primary benefits for healthcare providers participating in macro and MIPS? Is it A, increased administrative burden, B, potential financial incentives for high performers, C, non-compliance leads to bonus payments, and D, emphasis on quantity over quality? Jose, I knew you'd like these answers. You guys can go ahead and put those answers in chat. James already going in with B. All right, I like it. I like it.
Shocked James came up with an answer without his partner here, you know? That was
Is
really
she?
fast.
I don't think I see her in here yet. That's not like Carol. That's not like Carol. She'll be in here. Anybody else? We'll give it about another 20 seconds. Don't be shy. James has got to pick up the slack. So the answer, again, the question is, what is one of the primary benefits for healthcare providers participating in macro and MIPS? The answer is B, potential financial incentives for high performers is the answer. So James, great job on that. And let's go ahead and exit out of this and we'll get into the presentation portion. Awesome. And you guys can hear me and see me okay, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get it started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Compliance Step-by-Step webinars. Today, we will be talking about the role of HR. I'm Ray Walters. I will be your host for today's session. I'm also joined by my co-host, Jose Delgado. And in this topic, we will be diving into a critical intersection between human resources and medical compliance. I'd like to introduce you guys to our presenter and esteemed guest, Miss Lia Hibbert. Just a little bit of background with Lia. And Lia, hey, if I butcher it, feel free to interject. I know you have a lot of experience, but again, Lia is the CEO and Director of Organizational Development for Strategic HRM, located in the U.S. Virgin Islands. She has 12 years of experience in personal management, business administration, and compliance. Lia has been a cornerstone for serving the U.S. Virgin Islands and also Florida communities. Lia brings a wealth of diverse experience, having worked with private corporations, nonprofits, local and federal governments, and regional task forces. Her strategic approach involves developing relationships, identifying pain points, assessing inefficiencies, and devising solutions to streamline organizational development and HR functions. I also know Lia at a personal level. She was a client of ours through Epi Compliance. She used to work with a physical therapy clinic as the compliance officer. Used our services, and Lia, I hope you can maybe chime in and give us some street cred. I know we work very close in tandem, and we also I mentioned this in previous webinars as well. About our EPI conferences and in-conference event. Lia also is a CHSO candidate as well. She took the Certified HIPAA Security Officer training. And Lia, feel free to chime in with your experience using EPI compliance and the certified HIPAA security officer training.
Sure, most definitely. So first of all, you did do me justice. Thank you for that.
I did my best.
As Ray mentioned, in 2021, I attended an EPI conference. I was able to get certified as a HIPAA security officer. I think that was the best thing that I did ultimately. As he mentioned, I am CEO of Strategic HRM, and we are a business consulting company serving both the U.S. Virgin Islands and Florida communities. Ultimately, we aim to align HR and organizational development strategies with the focus on empowering people and transforming organizations. And so our niche area is definitely the healthcare industry, although we serve clients across the board. And the reason for that is because we have a particular passion for combining efforts of HR strategies with that of medical compliance, hence today's webinar. So
No,
thank you for that,
absolutely.
Ray.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate your input, and yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. And Leah, I'll let you have the stage.
Sure. And as previously mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video just so that we can maintain quality. I just want to ensure that we can get through this, especially with our overcast weather here today. So,
Yeah, no
all right.
worries.
Sure. Okay, so ultimately, the purpose of today's webinar is to provide a comprehensive understanding of the critical intersection between HR and medical compliance within organizational frameworks, specifically healthcare organizations. And by exploring these foundational principles, regulations, best practices, the aim is to equip HR professionals, compliance officers, healthcare administrators, and employees with necessary knowledge and tools. And what we're hoping to be able to do is create a means for them to integrate HR and medical compliance strategies. Our key objectives of focus today are to clarify the essential role of HR in ensuring medical compliance within the workplace, to examine the legal and regulatory landscape governing HR and medical compliance. We also are going to review the benefits to aligning HR policies and procedures with medical compliance requirements. And then ultimately, we'll discuss the importance of combining both HR and medical compliance strategies. So just an overview of what we'll talk about with regards to the current landscape of healthcare compliance. We'll look at regulatory bodies and guidelines as well as compliance challenges. We'll take a look at role of HR in compliance, HR's responsibility, as well as the need for collaboration with compliance officers. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide, Free.
I might have jumped the gun. Is this the right slide, or should I jump forward one more?
It's all good. You can go ahead and
So
jump
hard
forward
to find
one
good
more.
help, man. So hard to find good help.
Sorry.
You
How about
can go
this?
on to slide 4. Yes, there we
Okay.
go. This is where we want to be. So ultimately, the significance of medical compliance within healthcare organizations cannot be overstated. It plays such a critical role in several key areas. So when we talk about patient safety, medical compliance ensures healthcare providers adhere to established protocols, procedures, standards, all designed to protect patients from harm. This includes following clinical guidelines for diagnosis and treatment, maintaining proper sanitation and infection control measures, and accurately documenting patient information to prevent medical errors. Ultimately, by promoting adherence to best practices and evidence-based medicine, medical compliance contributes directly to safety of patients and well-being of patients. When we talk about data security, in an era of increasing digitization and the significance of electronic health record systems and what they mean for healthcare organizations, data security is really paramount. Medical compliance encompasses regulations such as the Healthcare Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which mandates safeguards to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of patient health information. Compliance with data security measures helps to prevent unauthorized access, data breaches, identity theft, and other cyber threats, ultimately safeguarding patient sensitive medical data and preserving their privacy rights. Further, healthcare organizations have a responsibility to uphold ethical standards. Medical compliance involves adhering to guidelines and principles such as respect for patient autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. This includes ensuring that entities obtain informed consent from patients before medical procedures. They're maintaining confidentiality of patient information. They're avoiding conflicts of interest and ensuring equitable access to healthcare services. Compliance with these standards fosters trust between patients and healthcare providers. This enhances the reputation of the organization, and it also promotes culture of integrity and professionalism. By adhering to these requirements, by implementing robust policies and procedures and promoting a culture of compliance, healthcare providers can most definitely mitigate risks, protect patients' rights, and deliver high-quality care that meets the highest standards of safety and ethics.
So I know
Now,
you
with
had mentioned
regards
some
to
of those regulatory bodies that are involved here. It looks like this slide explains that such.
Sure. So specific to the regulatory bodies that govern medical compliance, there's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which protects patient health information, privacy, and security. So with regards to HIPAA in the realm of HR, it mandates the protection of employees' private health information and sets standards for its secure handling, ensuring compliance with privacy regulations in health care-related HR practices. The Office of Civil Rights ensures compliance with federal laws protecting individuals' civil rights and privacy rights in healthcare settings, also enforcing HIPAA. Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for enforcing compliance with healthcare laws and regulations, overseeing health-related programs and services. The FDA regulates the safety and efficacy of medical devices and pharmaceuticals, while the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services oversees compliance with Medicare and Medicaid regulations, and the Office of Inspector General oversees and enforces compliance in healthcare laws and regulations, specifically to prevent fraud, waste, abuse in federal healthcare programs. Now, I just wanted to make mention, like most entities don't necessarily know that during the recruitment or onboarding process, it's critical to check the OIG website as part of the background check process, specific for healthcare professionals to ensure they're not blacklisted for Medicare services. So if an individual is found to be blacklisted and is on staff, then the entire entity would be considered non-compliant and as a result, subject to loss of Medicare certification. So these are some of the areas of overlap that I really wanted to draw some points on. So if you can go on to slide 6.
Yeah, I have. Before we move on, Leah, you rose a good point there. And you're talking about the exclusion list.
Yes,
Yeah.
the OIG exclusion list.
Where would our audience be able to go to locate that exclusion list if they wanted to look into that?
So I can most definitely provide the link, but it is available on the OIG website. You can search for the OIG exclusion list. You enter in the name of the individual, and the key point is you don't want to find their name. You want to
Exactly.
search and not find their name,
Yep.
right?
Yep. No, I agree 100%. Don't want to be on that list. So
No, not at all. So where some of the entities, the regulatory bodies that overlap and some of the guidelines. So there's OSHA, right? Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This entity ensures that healthcare facilities comply with regulations to protect workers from occupational hazards and to ensure a safe work environment. The Department of Labor, for example, oversees compliance with labor laws and regulations in healthcare settings. American Disabilities Act ensures compliance with anti-discrimination laws requiring employers to provide reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities in the workplace. So all of these have overlapping areas of medical compliance and HR resource practices, as well as the Family Medical Leave Act.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about adherence to these guidelines, it's really essential to maintain compliance across the board. I mean, HIPAA ensures the protection of patient health information, privacy, and security, while compliance with regulations from OCR enforces federal laws safeguarding individuals' civil rights and privacy practices in healthcare settings. Both of these are essential for maintaining legal and ethical standards for operations.
in other words, as a healthcare practice, you got to have it. Got to have HIPAA, you got to have OSHA, and got to have, if you're dealing with Medicare patients, have to have those measures in place. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately crucial to ensure compliance with various aspects of healthcare operations. It's really interdepartmental, it's interoperational across the board, and it's necessary to underscore ultimately the financial risk. I mean, the financial health, the sustainability of the organization, as well as competitive advantage. So you can move on to slide 7. So there are compliance challenges, right? Of course. And so what are some of these challenges? An evolving regulatory landscape. So regulations are constantly changing. It's a very dynamic environment. There are also frequent updates to healthcare regulations and standards. These can be driven by advancements in a variety of things like medical technology, shifts in healthcare models, evolving patient needs, also legislative and policy initiatives, right? So we have to stay abreast of these updates. It requires constant vigilance, it requires proactive monitoring, and you have to have designated team members like compliance officers to lead the charge and to implement the due diligence. We also have, as we just recently discussed, the multiplicity of regulatory bodies. So having a variety of entities on the federal level, as well as the state level, having accrediting bodies like the Joint Commission, Healthcare Facilities Accreditation Program. I mean, each of these entities have their own sets of rules and guidelines. This creates complexities, and you have to have the means, you have to have the structure, you have to have the team to help you navigate such. Otherwise, you can become very quickly vulnerable to, a lot of the liabilities that could occur, as well as issues of non-compliance and penalties thereafter. There's also interconnectedness of regulations. So, a lot of these regulations and standards could be interconnected, one dependent on the next. So it's understanding that, it's being able to navigate those interdependencies, and that requires a comprehensive understanding of regulatory frameworks. You also have resource intensiveness. So, achieving compliance with changing regulations and standards demands significant resources, time, personnel, financial investment. You have to allocate resources for training, for upgrades in systems, for process improvements, for ongoing monitoring, for auditing activities, all to ensure a culture of continuous compliance. And, I tend to serve smaller organizations, and I have to say, like, smaller entities tend to be limited by resources, right? With smaller budgets, they don't, they have to leverage what's available. And these resource demands can be particularly burdensome, so this is why streamlining interdepartmental efforts can be so impactful on organizational outcomes. At an organization, for an organization at any size, really.
So, Leah, if I can, I know that you've got a ton of information here, but when I look at a small office, and I know that you focus specifically on HR, what's your process for determining where we should focus, right? So if everything is urgent and critical, nothing is urgent and critical. So like what are the things that you take a look out for and say, hey, we definitely want to keep an eye on this first, and then kind of go down that list, if you will.
Sure. So ultimately, what I aim to do is perform an audit whenever I start with any client. I will look at, one, what is your organizational strategy? What are your goals? What are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? I also look at their HR strategy. Okay, is your structure, is your function of HR for the entire employee life cycle set in alignment with the goals that you're trying to achieve? How are you evaluating or measuring your ability to meet those goals and objectives? And then as part of that process, how compliant are we across the board? How are we showing up in the areas necessary to ensure that we're reducing vulnerabilities and we're reducing liabilities? So when we speak specifically about healthcare organizations, when I look at HR strategies, I'm making sure that I look at, from the aspect of recruitment straight down to exit strategy, where are we integrating efforts to ensure that we're complying with medical standards so that we're taking care of both patients and employees from that perspective? So, for example, with the recruitment process, I gave the example of the OIG exclusion list, making sure that background checks are compliant across the board, making sure that we are hiring individuals that we have verified credentials for, making sure that these individuals are integrating and being trained and oriented and onboarded in a way that they're set up for success. And that includes exposing them in great detail to the compliance program, ensuring that they're receiving the trainings necessary, whether it be the HIPAA, privacy, security, the OSHA, the Medicare, et cetera. Also, as part of performance management, We create very detailed job profiles, and I call them profiles because they're more than just a job description. They're more than just duties and responsibilities. We set goals with very specific vital functions that are in alignment with the organization's goals. We set specific products that we want to see as deliverables. We set priority metrics and then substats to ensure we can evaluate success at meeting those metrics. And as part of that process, we detail specifically what training is necessary, where the milestones are, and how we're also going to acknowledge, recognize, and award performance for meeting specific milestones, all in alignment as well with the requirements for the medical compliance program. So this is part of our process. And then ultimately, down to exit strategy, we've created offboarding strategies that ensures that confidentiality of healthcare information, confidentiality of client company information, et cetera, is part of that offboarding process as well. So these are some of the ways in which we integrate. And then also we develop a recommendation report that will provide specific implementation strategies with timelines, with goals and objectives as well. Everything has to be smart, right? We want to be able to evaluate success.
Sure.
And so, we want to ensure that our clients are able to address any gaps that are found in that original process of the audit. And then we want to be able to assist with implementation. And so this is pretty much our process in terms of how we integrate and how we bring together HR and medical compliance. That's high level though. That's not the detail, but it's high level.
It all starts, like you said, it all starts with an audit, right? See where the practice stands and what milestones that you want to aim for first, but no, that's all great stuff. Great stuff.
Exactly. So, there are lots of benefits. If you want to skip to slide 11.
There we go.
Yep. There are lots of benefits of, combining HR and medical compliance. Like I said previously, having a robust compliance program to safeguard patient safety and data is necessary. You want to be able to establish ethical standards for accountability. Of course, there are several compliance challenges. We discussed a couple, but ultimately, the support of HR in the process across the board is paramount. And from policy development and implementation to training and education, as I mentioned, to recruitment and onboarding, ensuring that, again, we are integrating the necessary steps across the board. I just want to make mention in particular, like, for example, with recruitment and onboarding, you want to ensure when you have your new hire documentation for new hires that they are completing a HIPAA security confidentiality agreement, right? That they are signing on to a sanction policy with regards to HIPAA security, that they're signing on to a code of conduct for ACA and Medicare. And then more specifically with regards to independent contractors, because a lot of entities have those as well. Independent contractors are considered their own entity. And so if they are or could be exposed to PHI, protected health information, under HIPAA, they're considered business associates. They have to complete business associate agreements. They have to each year complete business associate attestations. They have to prove that they've done the due diligence to ensure that they're taking the steps necessary as an entity to safeguard patient data. So these are just some of the aspects that not, necessarily everyone knows that they really should be integrating as part of their processes within HR, hence the overlap, right? And hence the need for more of an interdepartmental collaborative effort to address medical compliance issues and to develop medical compliance programs.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. And I would say, just to add to, I'd say it's safe to say at this point, if you're a smaller medical practice and you don't have any systems in place and you're sort of doing things on your own, it's not the way to go about it this day and age. You need, reliable resources out there, including HR or including epi compliance, or why not have them both, under
Most
under
definitely.
one belt.
And if you want to go to the next slide, cost reduction is key, right? We want to
Absolutely.
be able to provide the highest level of efficiency and quality, but we want to be able to reduce costs. So,
Yes.
streamlining those HR processes reduces administrative burden, right? By creating more strategic tasks and initiatives, it improves overall productivity and efficiency. With regards to minimizing compliance risks, adhering to industry standards and best practices, you reduce risks of violations, audits, fines, legal penalties, which we know can be really costly to rectify.
Absolutely.
You also want to optimize staffing and scheduling. And most entities might be like, okay, how do we integrate this here? How does it make sense? Well, having this cross-functional system between HR and medical compliance, you can better assign tasks to individuals. You can better manage staffing levels and schedules as a result. You can ensure adequate coverage of skilled and trained workers. You want to ensure efficient implementation of the compliance requirements so that you're minimizing unnecessary overtime too, right? And its related expenses, and reducing the risk of employee burnout. So it's all an overlap.
No, agree.
And then also,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you're also enhancing data accuracy and reporting when you have a centralized system. You're helping to reduce the gaps. You're improving communication and collaboration across departments. You're also streamlining credentialing and licensing processes. So you're verifying qualifications, you're maintaining compliance as a result, you're minimizing risk of errors and credentialing related delays. So these are just some of the areas that, can really assist healthcare organizations with cost reduction and efficiency. And of course, improve patient care and safety. If it weren't for the patients, we wouldn't have an entity, right? So ultimately, we want to ensure that what we're doing from an HR perspective is effective, and that those strategies and our compliance efforts are contributing to a culture of safety and quality within the healthcare organization. This will reduce costs, and ultimately, again, it creates that, or it augments competitive advantage as well.
No, nicely put, Leah. And by the way, guys, Leah is an affiliate of Epi Compliance, so a lot of the compliance side of things that she's mentioned, that's things that we can certainly help out with as well, as far as streamlining your training, your policies, procedures, your HIPAA confidentiality agreements, your business associate agreements, tasking, etc. And Leah said it very well. It's all about keeping things centralized. Us providing you the tools, you put those tools into motion, so to speak. But again, ultimately, it's going to improve efficiency, quality, and your cost.
So Leah, let me ask you, when I'm walking into an office, this is probably something a little bit more new age for myself. I know Dr. Delgado is not a huge fan of it, but he does recognize it. I find that a culture, the specific kind of culture within the office, can either help or hinder not just compliance but morale. I find that it may not necessarily be a causation, but there's definitely a correlation between a poorly performing office compliance wise and a poor morale within the office as well. Is that something that you guys touch within your organization? Because I know you're a life
Most definitely.
person in and of yourself.
Yes, most definitely there's a correlation. I mean, there's several layers here, and majority of the time it's systemic. And when we talk systemic, it goes down to what is communication like? What are the expectations around communication? Also, what are the expectations set for employees? Are the leaders being custodians of their own values? Talking about the values, do the staff know what those values are, and are they bought into them? So from a morale perspective, if the vision isn't clear and we're not having our leaders being those custodians of those values and that vision, you will have poor morale. You also want to foster a culture of inclusivity. you want you want individuals to have a sense of belonging. So when I talk about communication strategies, are you encouraging open feedback? Are you taking that feedback and integrating it into improving processes, procedures, workflow, etc.? A lot of the time too, employees are not necessarily feeling as if they can speak up, right? Are you creating the forums for such? Are you having regular staff meetings? Are you having opportunities to engage? So those are some of the layers there with regards to why there's correlation. And then more specifically, like I mentioned before with job profiles, if you're not clear on the expectations of the employees and how those job profiles, duties, responsibilities, goals, etc., align with the objectives of the compliance program, then they're going to be flailing, trying to figure out what it is they're really trying to achieve. So it really starts with setting those baseline expectations so that they understand what they're doing and how it trickles up into having an impact on bigger and broader organizational goals and outcomes.
Cool. Because this is definitely I was looking at, and I've been seeing a lot lately. And when we're talking about inclusivity, I usually use it as an actual catch-all term in the, hey, we're having a meeting, not a sermon. I'm not sermonizing to you. Management, executive teams, it's parent and child situation, right? Like I've got 2 young kids, so I see it more now in offices than I probably am actually seeing. Is probably a little bit of projection, but there's a lot of I'm talking, we should be talking rather than me talking to you, So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something interesting that I think that healthcare needs to catch up. That other industries have already caught on to how to do it. Maybe they've overcorrected in some ways. That's for another topic, another day and time. But for us in healthcare, we're still so top-down driven.
And you said a key point there. Practitioners want to practice, period, especially in small healthcare organizations. They just want to do what is their vital function, right? They want to create the impact that they set out to, which is ideal patient care, right? Which then produces revenue outcomes. However, there are layers to this. And that's where we can come into place, both EPI compliance and strategic HRM, right? We can definitely help to support with those layers to ensure that if there are any pain points along the way, if there are any gaps across the board, we're identifying vulnerabilities, we're coming up with strategies to be able to implement them. EPI compliance, I mean, is such an amazing provision for healthcare organizations, because not just are you providing the whole platform for a compliance program, you're constantly updating, right? Which is one of the challenges with compliance, is staying up to date. Yes. So providing that support to compliance officers by doing the due diligence to support them in ensuring that they're staying up to speed, and to keep them accountable, right? Because not just you provide templates and forms and all of this for policies, for procedures, you're also providing that accountability with checklists, making sure that each month you're staying up to date with a variety of things required by the regulatory bodies, and that you're staying on target and on task. And so, with that, coupled with the EPI courses, being able to provide that certification and that training, upskilling the workforce of a variety of organizations, I mean, ultimately, you're helping to do just what we set out to do, empower people and transform organizations. So
you mentioned accountability, and it's something to where, especially when I'm walking as a consultant or, and walking into my own office, I found that employees want to be given an opportunity, and those that don't, I need to find ways to weed them out, because they may be poisoning the well in one way, short-term or long-term, but they're happy with stagnation. And as the industry is constantly changing, and as you said, we have to constantly be changing as well. What are some of everybody knows the stick of just, all right, get it together or get out. But what are some of the carrots that you have that you recommend to clients? Because I mean, sure. I mean, the stick works, but it's only going to work for so long, right? And positive reinforcement is going to work better than negative reinforcement for a lot of people. So how do you what are some of the carrots that you like to use to foster that accountability on the compliance side, on not just like the boring alphabet agency compliance side, but on the day-to-day compliance of what we do?
Sure. So, you know, as human beings, we all want to just know that we're having some sort of impact. We all want to know that we are wanted and that we belong. We all want to know that we're worthy to be here, right? A part of this institution, whether formal or informal. So when we buy into working for an organization, we've bought into their vision for the most part, right? And so what I think tends to get lost with the whole carrot and stick is that employers set expectations, or oftentimes not. Expectations may not be clear. I want to keep driving that home because it happens very frequently.
Oh yeah.
Not just so when we see situations like this, we also want to do some introspection as an organization. What does employee satisfaction look like? Let's take a pulse. Do we have an issue with turnover and retention? If the answer to those things are lower on the satisfaction end, and we are constantly seeing turnover and we're having issues with retention, then more often than not, it's a systemic issue within the organization, not just the employee. Yes, the employees may have their own layers of issues, whether they be personal or professional, and part of HR's job is to get to understand that, right? And there are options to be able to do so. However, I really like to start with the organization, because we need to ensure that we're taking care of home first, and we're creating that sense of community and a place where people want to spend their time, right? You're spending 40 hours plus at work if you're an exempt employee, right?
Sure.
And so that is home at the end of the day. While we're trying to foster teams and not necessarily families, I mean, that is literally home. And so what type of environment are you creating? Is it conducive to that retention? Is it conducive to that satisfaction? Are you getting to know your employees? Intrinsically, what matters to them? Extrinsically, what matters to them? What are their values? Is it in alignment with our values? That's key. Oftentimes, the issues will lie that there's a disalignment with values. What's important to the employee is not necessarily important to the employer, and vice versa. And it's coming to that common ground to understand those differences is what makes the difference with regards to dealing with a situation, as if, you know, what you explained. Now, what are some ways that we can get to the bottom of understanding an employee? There are a variety of ways. Have open conversations, you know, mentorship, coaching. Also, there are a lot of assessments out there that are highly objective that can help to understand an employee, whether it be DISC, which looks at work style, communication style, how that shifts under certain pressure situations, whether it be EQ, looking at emotional intelligence, driving forces, what motivates an individual in the workplace, and how does that shift depending on the context of the situation and what's happening. These are also things that we do offer at Strategic HRM, both the assessments as well as the coaching and the mentorship that comes with it. And we have to be careful too with the stick, because get your act together or be gone can create significant liabilities for the organization with regards to wrongful discharge act, right? So we want to ensure that we are adhering to our own policies in our handbooks, that the probationary periods are being adhered to, that progressive discipline is being implemented, that where action is necessary, we have corrective action plans in place, and that they are actively being implemented, right, and documented. So these are just some of the areas that should be looked at before making a decision in terms of how to address situations like that with employees that may appear as toxic.
Got it. Okay.
Now,
one of the things that I've found with HR related issues in healthcare is a lot of practices since COVID have not been able to replace those that have quit or left. So it's not even a retention issue. It's a, where did everybody go?
So of course
So
we know there's been a
Recruitment
paradigm shift, right?
issue.
With
yeah,
COVID in terms of, a lot of people got comfortable working from home. And so that's just become more of a normalized thing. And a lot of individuals are looking for that degree of convenience, right? I'm able to work from home. I'm able to raise my family. I'm able to do the things that I wasn't necessarily able to do before when I had to show up in a physical location. So there's that. But something else with COVID, it took a lot of people home. And in being home, you had the time to be exposed to a lot more on social media, et cetera, right? And as a result, when we talk about issues of reputation, if you're not doing the due diligence for corporate social responsibility, and that's across the board, what you're doing internally and the impact you're creating externally. If that's highly visible and you have a reputation that follows that, and it's more along the negative lines, individuals will not want to buy in to an employment contract with you because your values are not in alignment. So that's another major issue. We're also having a situation where it's not just the great resignation, which is kind of dwindled. It's also the great retirement. We're losing a lot of older individuals that have significant institutional knowledge, and it's creating gaps because the individuals that are coming in do not have that institutional knowledge. Maybe the organizations did not have the succession plans in place. Maybe there was not cross-functional training to ensure that that knowledge was captured. And as a result, the individuals that are coming in are not necessarily meeting the mark. And so turnover is higher as well. So there are layers to it. But I always bring it back to, we have to first be able to shine a light on ourselves as the organization, figure out systemically how we're showing up, and determine if it's the ideal environment, and situation for our employees.
So I'm looking, because thankfully, my practice, I don't have any hiring issues, but there was a spot there where we were having hiring issues, and it wasn't necessarily for anything that we weren't doing, but it was like you were saying, what we were doing. And what we were doing was just trying to fill spots rather than focusing on the kind of person that we were looking for, the kind of qualities that we were looking for. And this goes even for the providers. Like I found that providers are my biggest compliance headache, my biggest interpersonal headache with HR. So it's like, how do you, if the provider is the owner of the practice or one of the longest standing employees, how do you get that dog to learn that new trick, to play well with the new employees long enough to at least break them in and find how can I put this, a status quo. I mean, I've got one provider, great provider, hates every single new employee. Every single one. At this point, it's a joke in the office that if he doesn't hate you, it means he hasn't interacted with you, which means you're not going to stay. Like
I would say
absolutely wild.
on the epi compliance side of things, we've dealt with some smaller practices where the practitioner just simply wants to do it all.
Yeah.
It just doesn't want to delegate the wants to be the compliance officer, wants to take care of the patient, doesn't want to delegate anything else out, because it's a trust thing,
So ultimately, again, you have to be able to lay out the expectations and be clear about it. For practitioners, they also have to be clear on what their vital functions and priorities are and ultimately stay in their lane.
Yes.
You want to achieve certain outcomes. You have to put the trust in the people that you hired once you've been clear about expectations to get the job done.
Yeah.
That's how you grow.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. If you're trying to be in the weeds and doing it all, there's no way that you can be effective at achieving the outcomes that you've set out to. So again, it just comes down to expectations. And even for small healthcare organizations, Just like everyone else has a job profile with very specific goals and vital functions, the CEO needs one too. And they should be adhering to it. And they should be tracking their progress and evaluating their success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, ultimately, yeah, it could go both ways on those polar ends. And with that individual, it's interesting. I would love to do a DISC assessment on that person, because I have a feeling there would be an S for steadiness, because steady people, while they are supportive, while they want to see the organization win, they tend to be set in their ways. They think that the way they do things is what's natural for the environment and what the environment needs, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard for them to be challenged to change and to adapt to new things. So I would
When
be
he
very
changes his
interested in
idea.
doing that.
When he changes, it's always his idea.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
doesn't matter if we brought it to him 3 months ago and just let him stew on it. It's no. He comes back, hey, you know what we should do? Oh, the thing that we told you about 3 months ago, we're already doing it, and you haven't noticed the difference. So go back to your corner. But yeah,
Part
he's
of that
absolutely
process too, though. Part of that process too. Something that we do. It works really well in smaller healthcare organizations. You can be very specific in picking key personnel in larger organizations, but 360 interviews, right? So you're having a team fit interview.
Yeah.
So, you know, you were talking about hiring the right people. What we do is we create a process that might be a little bit more lengthy, but the way we see it is we want not just us, but the individual to make an informed decision as to whether this is a fit. And part of that process is having the interview, understanding the skills and the competencies, having the practical assessment. Can you actually function with these skills? How does that work? How does it pan out in real application? Then how do you fit with the team?
Yeah.
Are you going to vibe well? You know, have them come in and sit down and do lunch with a team. How does that go? You know, also we have them do the assessments, and then ultimately they have the final interview with the CEO or the head of HR or whatever makes sense for the entity. But ultimately there might be layers to the process, but how we look at it and the way we advise is, if you put the time and effort on the front end, you lose less resources on the back end.
Yes.
Because if you deem them to be a better fit from the start,
yes,
all the time, all the effort, all the energy, all the money, everything that's being invested over that 90-day period or how long they last, right?
Yeah.
You want to see that ROI. You want to see that return on investment. So it's better to put in that due diligence at the start. So
cool. Yeah, sorry to derail probably what your presentation, but I was like, I want, there's certain things that
These are great questions.
I know that our team and our viewers, because it's the same shit. It's always a different flavor, but it's always the same questions, right?
Ultimately, yeah.
So it's just something to where I was just like, oh, let's dive a little bit deeper on specifics, because a lot of this stuff we're dealing with on a day to day. Yeah. So
Definitely.
I mean, everybody at least in our viewership is in this stuff. They're in the weeds every day, so they're seeing this stuff. So it'd just be a matter of like, what are the solutions to my problems?
Of course, of course. Well, ultimately, if you want to go forward, Ray. So there are a variety of resources when we talk about solutions. We talked about courses, online webinars. A lot of what EPI is doing is definitely in alignment, integrating the two as well, where it makes sense. Conferences and workshops, attending EPI conferences, having the ability to upskill your staff, get them trained as certified HIPAA security officers or administrators, definitely helps to take your organization to that higher level. Again, improving competitive advantage, increasing sustainability and resiliency. And then consulting services. So ultimately, I would be happy to be able to connect, first and foremost, and to be able to provide support in any way that I can that makes sense with me and my team. And then, going forward, EPI Compliance and myself are looking at ways that we can collaborate to be able to support healthcare organizations as well.
Nice. So yeah, so do we have any of the viewers can reach you, Ray?
Sure.
Yeah,
Do you want to
that's
go
on
to
the
the
next
next slide?
slide, actually.
Okay,
We'll,
perfect.
we'll pass
There
that.
we
So
go.
here's Leah's
Hey,
contact information. I'm actually going to post her website in the chat as well. Feel free
perfect.
to take a look at that. And Leah, I
Perfect.
appreciate you. I think this was very valuable information, and
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, don't be the jack of all trades. Use resources. Because
Yep.
ultimately that's what increases the efficiency. Using resources that provide these trainings, provide these policies, business associate agreements, the HIPAA confidentiality agreements, the audits, etc. Again, don't try to do it all on your own because
And
it's
on that same note, on that same note, I just want to drive home too. Like I mentioned, I tend to deal with a lot of smaller healthcare
Mhm.
organizations as they're near and dear to my heart. I own a small business as well. Um, but yeah, I definitely have to say, be proactive in streamlining these processes and procedures because you're a healthcare organization, you're subject to so many regulatory requirements. Because you're smaller doesn't mean that you're not as vulnerable as the larger entities. It means you're more vulnerable. You don't have the resources that larger entities have, that they can endure a degree of, legal penalties and fees and so on. And so you're never too small to put the structure in place, is what I'm driving home here. In
Yes.
order to grow to the next level, you have to have that sturdy foundation. Otherwise, what? A rocky home? How do we go up several stories without that structure and those systems? So
yeah.
we can definitely help to assist in supporting that. And I look forward to connecting. And I had a great time today, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, yeah, no problem.
No, glad to have you on. And yes, please, for those of you that are interested, please save Leah's contact information. I will be sending this out in an email as well to everybody that has attended, so you have this information as well. But for now, let's do a quick just question and answers. If anybody wants to chime in, we'll open up for just a quick Q&A before we end this session. I think this is great. I think we're going to be expounding upon this, and I know Leah, I said had mentioned that you'll be available sometime in April to have another discussion about this, and I think maybe even Jose and I might have a couple talks regarding this as well. Maybe even talk about
Yeah.
the Medicare exclusions list.
Oh, yeah, we went over the no-no list. I don't know if you caught that one, Leah. We went over the
Yeah.
no-no in regards to the breaches in January, right after Christmas. So
Oh, I
everybody that
didn't catch that
reported,
one.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and it was just the stupidest things are the things that end up causing all these breaches and all these
Mhm.
fines.
Yeah. No
So I mean,
training, no business associate agreements. Really, the
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
basics of compliance, really. But
Yeah, definitely.
cool. We got any questions, Ray, in there?
I don't see any yet. Brenda, Jill, anything?
Maybe I just asked them already. That's
We did actually cover a lot. You had some good
I was gonna
questions.
say, I
So
think that was pretty
that
comprehensive.
was some pretty good questions. All right. Well, we'll end it on that note. Again, appreciate everybody's time. Leah, again, appreciate you joining in. And hey, we didn't have any internet issues either. You sounded great. So
Grateful, let me tell you.
so again, we will be sending out the recording of this, and you guys will be receiving an email as well with Leah's information if you'd like to get in contact. But until next time, we will see you on next week's webinar. Like I said, topic hasn't been decided yet, but I think we're going to stick to the HR side of things until further notice. So just stay
Well,
tuned.
2 weeks from now, you're going to be doing a quick show and tell of the new stuff on the Epi website, right?
Yeah, that is correct. So, and I mentioned this to Leah some time ago, but we are going to be releasing the latest version of Epic Compliance very soon. And, the ultimate goal of this version is to make things simpler on the system. You know, one thing that I can say about Epic Compliance is this is not a company that remains stagnant. We're always trying to find ways to improve the processes on the system. So this new version is going to do that much. And yeah, we will be haven't, it's to be announced, but I'll have a better idea once we get a defined release date. But we are going to have a little workshop and go over to the new version of the system. So stay
Well, that's
tuned for that.
exciting. I'm definitely here for that.
Yeah, no, you'll be getting an invitation. Don't worry.
Awesome.
But no, I'm looking forward to it as well. And like I said, it's all about making things easier for our customers. And like I said, I think it's safe to say compliance, not necessarily a fun subject, right? But it's one of those costs of doing business. You got to have it. We're here to make it easier for you and help streamline. So, but cool. Other than that, that's all I got. Hey, again, I appreciate your guys' time, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
Sounds
Yep,
good.
have a good
Take care, everyone. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye.